All right, let's dive into one of the most incredible stories of exploration ever told. We're talking about a single journey that quite literally redrew the map for an entire continent and really changed the course of history forever.
So that's the big question we're tackling today, right? How on earth did one merchant's journey, we're talking no planes, no cars, no GPS, not even reliable maps, how did it manage to connect two completely different worlds and spark centuries of exploration after it? Well, our story kicks off way back in 1271 with a 17-year-old from Venice. His name, Marco Polo. And just get a load of the scale of this map. He would travel all the way from Italy, across the entire Asian continent to China, and then all the way back again. It was a completely unbelievable undertaking, and it all started with his very ambitious family of merchants.
To really get this journey, you've got to understand the family first. The Polos weren't just some random adventurers, you know? They were perfectly positioned for this kind of epic quest.
So here he is, our main character, Marco Polo. He was born into a wealthy, bustling Venetian society, and he probably seemed destined for a life of trade. But his life's work would become something so much bigger. He would basically become a human bridge between the East and the West. Now, what's really crucial here is that Marco wasn't the first Polo to travel east, not by a long shot. His father, Niccolo, and his uncle, Maffeo, were already trailblazers. They were savvy jewel merchants who had actually journeyed before to the court of the great Mongol emperor Kublai Khan. That first contact really laid the groundwork for Marco's incredible future.
Okay, so we've set the stage, now let's get to the journey itself. And let me tell you, this was not a quick trip. Just getting to China was an odyssey that would test them to their absolute limits. This map shows the absolutely mind-boggling overland route they took. They followed the legendary Silk Road, you know, the economic lifeline of the ancient world. They traveled from the Middle East, through the deserts of Persia, over the mountains of Afghanistan, and across the vast plains of Central Asia. And just look at this timeline. 4 years. Let that sink in for a second. They leave in 1271. Along the way, Marco gets so sick he has to stop and recover for an entire year in Afghanistan. They cross some of the highest mountains on the planet. It's not until 1275 that they finally arrive at their destination. You know, the journey was just this incredible mix of highs and lows. They faced seriously dangerous elements, from freezing mountain passes to brutal deserts, not to mention the constant threat of bandits. But mixed in with all that hardship were these amazing experiences, like seeing bustling markets and meeting people from all these different cultures and religions that would totally change Marco's view of the world. So they finally get there, right? But believe it or not, arriving is just the beginning of the really wild part of this story. The Polos didn't just visit China. They stayed. They became part of the empire. 17 years. I mean, come on, just think about that. Marco Polo leaves Venice as a teenager and doesn't return until he's a middle-aged man. He spent his entire young adulthood living and working in the Mongol Empire. China wasn't just a place he visited, it became his home. And he didn't just, hang out on the sidelines. He went all in. He completely adapted. He became a true man of the empire, learning multiple languages. Now, he never learned Chinese, but his knack for other regional languages made him incredibly valuable to the Mongol rulers for talking to people all across their huge territories. And this quote right here, it really sums up their whole relationship. The young, sharp Venetian totally impressed the powerful emperor. Kublai Khan saw Marco's curiosity and intelligence as a massive asset, and he put him to work. So why was he so successful? Well, it all came down to a really unique position of trust. See, the Mongol rulers often preferred foreign administrators who weren't tied up in local politics, and Marco fit that bill perfectly. He basically became an imperial envoy, traveling on behalf of the Khan to the farthest corners of the empire, places like southwest China and maybe even Myanmar, bringing back detailed reports on the people, the economy, you name it. But all good things must come to an end, right? After 17 years, it was finally time to head back to Venice. Their journey home, though, would turn out to be just as epic and just as dangerous as their journey there. So why leave? Well, it was a mix of opportunity and, honestly, a little bit of fear. First, they were given a really important mission, escorting a princess to Persia for her wedding. But second, there was a huge risk. Kublai Khan was their protector. but he was getting old. The Polos were worried, and probably rightly so, that without him, their status as foreigners could get really dangerous after he died. So they didn't go back the way they came. Oh no. This time, they took to the seas. You can see the route here, this massive arc through the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean. It's a whole different map of the world, one full of bustling ports and dangerous waters, taking them past Vietnam, Sumatra, and India. And just like the trip there, the voyage home was an absolute marathon. It took 2 years. They started with a huge fleet, 600 people. They had to stop and wait in Sumatra for 5 months just to avoid the monsoon season. And get this, by the time they finally reached Persia to deliver the prince she was supposed to marry had already died. All right, so after all that, they're finally home. And this is where their story goes from an incredible adventure to something that literally changes the world. So just picture this. The year is 1295. 3 men, looking weathered and worn, show up in the city of Venice. And here's the kicker. After being gone for 24 years, an entire generation, nobody knew who they were. Not a soul. They'd been gone so long, their own friends and family just assumed they were dead. But their physical return was just one part of the story. The real legacy came a little later, and in a pretty unexpected way. Marco was captured during a war, and while he was in prison, he dictated all his stories to a writer. The result was this book, The Travels of Marco Polo, which would become one of the most influential books in history. And that right there is the true legacy. Marco's book was like opening a window onto a whole new planet for Europeans. It showed them a world that was far bigger, wealthier, and more complex than they could have ever imagined. We're talking unheard of things like paper money and rocks that burned for fuel. This knowledge sparked a fire of curiosity that would directly inspire future explorers, including Christopher Columbus himself. So this leaves us with a final thought. Marco Polo's journey was all about exploring the geographical unknown. But in an age where our globe is pretty much all mapped out, it makes you ask, what are the new frontiers, the new worlds that we're all exploring today? Is it in technology, in science, or maybe even in space?